Nikki Haley, who we did a kind of an informal survey here in the studio, and I talked to some of my friends last night, and they said that they felt that she ran away with the show.
I thought Nikki Haley just knocked it out of the park with the debt, blaming Republicans and Donald Trump for the debt.
Wow, that was a surprising reaction from Ainsley. I thought she would want to defend Donald Trump. That's what she's certainly done in her career so far. But nonetheless, clearly the fine folks over at Fox and Friends absolutely believe that Nikki Haley nailed it last night during the first GOP primary debate. Is she gonna happen? I don't think she's gonna happen. We watched the exact same debate, and I don't know, Cenk. I felt like she was very forgettable in that whole exchange, interaction.
So I forget if we predicted it at the end of the coverage or not, or if I just tweeted about it a couple of times, but I was like, oh, I know who they're gonna say won, Nikki Haley. Why? Because she was the most establishment candidate.
She certainly was, yeah.
They always love the most establishment candidate. And by the way, here we go again, whenever it's, the president is going to affect economic issues massively. So all of a sudden, Fox News and MSNBC this morning saying, Nikki Haley, way to go, Nikki Haley. Let's go. Scarborough and Fox and Friends both agree it should definitely be Nikki Haley. Why? Because she's the most corporate candidate there is. And we watched it last night. And so she's out there screaming, more defense spending, more money to Israel, more money to all my donors.
By the way, as she calls for more money in defense spending, loosening up the purse strings when it comes to potentially her donors. Just today, she put out a statement about how she does not believe that people should be retiring at 65 because 65 is just too young to retire.
Oh, yeah, 100%. By the way, Pence's policies are just as bad as Nikki Haley's on the economic issues.
Yeah.
They're always talking about cutting Social Security, Medicare, making you work longer. They hate the average guy. That's why it was so telling when Ducey's like, we polled the studio here and everybody in corporate media agreed. And then I asked my friends in the cocktail circuit and they all agreed. The rich love Nikki Haley. And we watched the debate and we don't like him at all. But we thought Vivek Ramaswamy probably won.
So look, we're gonna hear from Republican voters and who they thought won in just a bit. And honestly, who cares what we think, right? I mean, sure, we'll do our analysis, but at the end of the day, what matters is the perception or perspective of the actual Republican voters who are gonna make the decision in the primaries. But I do wanna go to that MSNBC video that you were alluding to, Cenk, because it's worth watching. Let's take a look.
Some kind of debate last night. But Nikki Haley had a couple of moments. She really did.
I think Nikki Haley had the best debate of the night in terms of the expectations game. That's often how debates are judged. She came in, she'd been having trouble differentiating herself. She was strong on foreign policy. She was somebody who bridged the foreign policy of the Republican Party, and she went hard after Vivek on experience, and it really left.
She has it.
She's got it.
Nikki Haley had a great night. I think Essie wrote this. I thought she stood out among the group.
And I gotta say, corporate media and establishment Republican politicians are so thirsty, so thirsty for an ordinary, bland, traditional conservative Republican, right? The pre-Trump days, that's what they're looking for.
Traditional corporate Republican,
yeah, 100%.
That's what they're desperate for sure. Look guys, I say it on the show all the time, the hardest thing in the world is to escape your own perspective. So there's two reasons why all these anchors are all saying the same thing. And if you noticed in the videos we just showed you, that was Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. All of the anchors and all of the pundits agreed Nikki Haley. Because one is they have a financial incentive to have a corporate Democrat and a corporate Republican run against each other. They're all gonna spend tons of money on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. They're gonna get that money from corporate donors. It's this corruption machine that feeds most of all corporate media, those cable channels, right? So they have a financial incentive to go in that direction. But more than that, on a personal level, it's just that they can't escape their own perspective. They think everybody thinks the status quo is great. We just want to get back to the status quo. We just want to get back to the establishment being in charge. They don't think of it in those terms, but that's what their gut leads them to. That's why they all agree. It's groupthink, right? Meanwhile, we try to analyze the debate in terms of not what we want, but what do Republican voters like? Because this is the thing that drives me most crazy about pundits on television. They're always with no data, no facts, no nothing to back them up. They substitute their opinion for the opinion of the American people.
I see that happening a lot. And look, sometimes it's difficult to parse out the two and put your own personal preferences aside and put yourself in the mind of voters and what voters very likely are gonna want. So what's really interesting is that CNN spoke to a group of Republican Iowa voters after the debate. Why don't we take a look at that video and see if the corporate press's predictions are at all aligned with the actual voters?
Who do you think won the debate? I'm gonna do it in alphabetical order to be fair. Anyone think Doug Burgum did the best? That's 0. Anyone think Chris Christie did the best? He certainly got most of the airtime. A lot of the airtime, not most of the airtime. How about Ron DeSantis? How many of you think Ron DeSantis did the best? That's 2 people. How about Nikki Haley? 1, 2, 3, 4 people. Asa Hutchinson? Mike Pence? 0. Vivek Ramaswamy? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Tim Scott? Okay, so this panel here thinks Ramaswamy won the debate. Tell me why you think he won the debate.
I was reminded of the time when Vivek was talking about the national identity situation, and I know Pence brought up that that wasn't really an issue, but I think it was a generational problem because Vivek understands that young folks don't really understand that people my age don't really love America, and if you don't love it, you can't protect it. And I think if we fix that problem, then people will, as a natural byproduct, want to protect America and what it stands for.
Look, I gotta say, I've had a little bit of difficulty in expressing this on the show because I don't want people to think I'm going in the direction of jingoism or the annoying and oftentimes fake patriotism you see among some. But I think that point that Vivek makes is a legitimate one about loving the country. I mean, look, understanding that this country has flaws and we should work to improve and we should always look to improve, right? But I do feel like there's this growing disdain for the country that's not healthy, and I'm worried about that.
No, I'll go further. I love America. I'm not shy about it. I'm not gonna back away from that at all. I don't care what anybody says. And does that mean that I think America is flawless? Of course not, that's ridiculous. There's 1,000 things to improve. And part of the reason I love America is because we're supposed to improve them. And they've given us a pathway to improve them. We haven't in a long time, but I would love to. And my parents and my family came here because we love this country. So ideals. We didn't come because we would love to be among white people or black people or whatever. We came for the idea of America. And the idea is land of opportunity, hope, and freedom, right? So now you could say, well, first of all, if you're saying that sounds like Republican points, well, that's shame on the Democrats. No, freedom is not a Republican talking point. It's something we should all cherish, and we should hold the Republicans accountable when they don't actually mean it and go against that idea all the time. And equality of opportunity is not equality of opportunity for everyone who's already rich. It's equality of opportunity for all of us, That's why America's awesome. And so did it have problems in its founding? Of course it did, guys. Why do we live in these extremes where the right wing's like, no, America's never done anything wrong, and everything they did is great, and don't teach them things that were bad, right? And then some on the left are like, no, we hate America, it's the worst. The only reason it was formed was to do slavery, and everybody's evil. It's like, come on, guys, come on. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I love you, brothers and sisters, but that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading, because I want to really fully understand critical race theory. I want to read the scholars and what the actual thesis is, as opposed to the summaries of the thesis. And so Derek Bell is one of the prominent scholars in critical race theory. And really the center of the thesis is that racism is permanent in America, right? That there's no way to root it out, there's no way to progress. And I disagree with that.
No, of course it's wrong. Sorry, look, I love that he's putting it forward and we're having discussions about it, and it's a graduate level class.
Right.
And if you can't handle that in graduate school, then you shouldn't be in graduate school. It's not taught in any of the high schools. Republicans are totally lying about it, let alone elementary or junior high. It's ridiculous, right? To say that when it isn't true. But do I agree with him on that? No, I don't agree with him on that. And I mean, I have 1,000 reasons why, but my personal experience shows that too. When my dad came to the country, it was so open and welcoming to a Muslim immigrant. And then later, as I grew up, unfortunately, it became more closed to Muslim immigrants. And then Trump famously said, we should ban all Muslim immigrants until we figure out what the hell is going on. So when I love America, it's not because, I think it's great and it's wonderful that Trump said that. Of course not, right? But look at the difference in the different time periods. It goes to show you, no, change is definitely possible. It can get better, it can get worse, and the culture is malleable. To say that it cannot change, and it cannot change for the positive, is A, completely wrong in my opinion, and B, it's depressing to your own side. It says don't bother trying for change. Don't bother trying to make things better.
That's exactly right.
Lose all hope. And I don't agree. I'm never gonna agree to that, okay? So, but back to Vivek and Pence and all these guys. Look, Pence made the argument when Vivek and Pence fought in the debate that everything is good now. Why? Because he's in favor of the status quo. And Vivek said, no, the country's going in the wrong direction. And I knew Vivek was gonna win that argument because I've seen the polling. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. 65% of the country, not 65% of Republicans, 65% of the whole country says we're going in the wrong direction. And here's a bunch of corporate hacks that get out there and go, rah, rah, we're going in a great direction, right? No, that's silly. And they say that because they're in great shape and their donors are in great shape. And the guys in the media, they're almost everyone you saw on screen there are multimillionaires. So they're like, what do you mean? Pence and Nikki Haley are so right, we're in great shape. Meanwhile, the Republican voters, we told you. You asked them and they go, no, country's not going in good shape, but we wanted to, and we believe in America. So Vivek hit them on both of those things. That's why we thought he was gonna win.
So I wanna go to one other, so you watched that focus group, right? That's, I don't know, it was like a dozen people. Let's look at an actual poll and see how Republican voters felt after the primary debate. This was actually shocking. So this is a poll done by the Washington Post, and they report that Ron DeSantis was the one that the likely Republican voters believe won that debate. I just find that super shocking. However, Vivek Ramaswamy is very close to him at 26%. And remember, Vivek Ramaswamy just weeks ago was being referred to as a long shot candidate. You know, what is he really running for? Is he trying to get a cabinet position? Is he hoping that, if Trump ends up going to prison and drops out of the race, that maybe he'll be the front runner? Who knows what the motivations are, but I'll say this. Regardless of what you feel about his policies, and there are many of his proposals that I think are goofy and ridiculous, including increasing the voting age to 25 years old and forcing people to take a civics test before being able to vote.
Yeah, why don't you just do a poll tax while you're at it?
I mean, insane. I don't agree with any of that stuff, right? However, just judging by his performance on that stage, speaking of optics, right? He came out across as strong, confident, charismatic. That confidence really does go a long way. He did have some goofy moments though, including the debate portion about Ukraine. And that was when Chris Christie and Nikki Haley almost like tag teamed in crushing him.
Yeah.
And he looked like a lost child briefly. That was the weakest moment in the debate for him. But even so, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at the entirety of the debate, I do think that he came out on top.
So I have an explanation why the primary voters are a little bit different than the focus group that you just saw. Because primary voters are much older than the average population. Whereas the focus group you saw on television was mixed age and a lot of young people in there. And number two, the primary voters don't have nearly as much information and they go so much more on name recognition. And DeSantis has much larger name recognition and has had a lot of positive publicity. And Vivek is so young, so there's a lot of reasons why DeSantis beat him a little bit with the primary voters, but you see how strong a guy who no one had ever heard of a couple of months ago came in because he actually had a debate strategy to appeal to Republican voters instead of television pundits. And I'm gonna say one more thing. Nikki Haley did better than I expected among those primary voters in that poll. She didn't do that great, but better than I expected. So, so they're seeing something positive there. So give her credit for that. And Chris Christie's still not doing well, but I'm telling you, let's see what happens. But I'm still saying that Chris Christie's gonna be one of the last ones left because Republican voters respect strength. Let's see what happens.
And by the way, in regard to that Washington Post poll, they polled the voters both before and after the debate. So the numbers that I shared with you were their responses after the debate. But in regard to the poll that happened prior to the debate, here's what they found. Haley showed the most improvement when it came to the share of Republicans who say they would consider voting for her. Pre-debate, 29% of GOP primary voters who watched the debate said they were considering voting for her, and that increased to 46% after the debate.
Okay, so then look, by the way, that means the answer is somewhere between us and cable news, because they thought, she nailed it. We thought she was just mediocre, but the Republican primary voters thought pretty good. Vivek was better according to them. We were right about that. And by the way, everyone on cable news thought Vivek did terrible. So they were 100% wrong about that. They're like, oh, he didn't even want to support more defense spending. What a child.
They don't really seem to like him.
No, they hate him.
Yeah, it's
pretty
pretty obvious
As
to me.
what I've been saying all along.
That's gonna help him, by the way.
Of course it's gonna help him. Yeah. If you're a Republican candidate, you want the press to hate you. If you're a Democratic candidate, you don't want that, because unfortunately, way too many Democratic primary voters still listen to the jackasses on MSNBC and CNN. But for Republicans, that's a badge of honor, right? And the reason the cable guys don't like him is because he's an outsider. They despise all outsiders. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.